Hi, welcome to valuationpodcast.com, a podcast and video series about all things related to business and valuation. My name is Melissa Gragg, and I provide online divorce, valuation, and mediation services in St. Louis, Missouri. Today, we will discuss divorce finances, tracing marital assets and separate property with Beth Garrett and Bob Boyd. Bob Boyd is a family law attorney in Atlanta, Georgia, and co-founder of Boyd, Collar, Nolen, Tuggle, and Roddenbery. Bob is a leader in family law who has received recognition from his colleagues across Georgia and the nation for his work in high net worth divorce litigation and contested custody cases. Beth Garrett is a lawyer and accountant in Atlanta, Georgia. She's also a partner in the Divorce Litigation Support Practice at Frazier Deeter, primarily assisting high net worth individuals and corporate executives with divorce, tax, and accounting issues. She helps people through mediation and works with divorce lawyers through all financial aspects of litigation and child support matters. She's also a valuation expert and has a credential. Welcome, Beth and Bob. How are you? But do you guys have any unique situations that you want to tell us about, or as we kind of look at some of your information on how to reach you and things like that?
I would just go back a little bit to some of the surprises that when you were talking about how much do you need? Do you really need every single month? I think what I typically find is when I'm trying to just give me the year-end statements, that always seems to come back to bite me, because I'll get the year-end statements and then they're not really year-end. They don't have all the activity for the year. Or like I went into pretty great detail on the retirement account, but an investment account is totally different because there's usually lots and lots of ins and outs, and it's all during the year. And when you say like, oh, well, I had $2 million when I got married, so don't I just get that now? Well, they're conveniently forgetting that 5 years into the marriage, that account was at zero, and then they built it back up. So that's why I do need to see all the in-between statements, because we do have to show not just what you had, but what happened to it all throughout the marriage. I think that's where a lot of the surprises and forgetfulness comes in when we start trying to prove these things.
Well, and I would just add that to me, the hardest case that I get is when you have a couple that have primarily lived on separate property, and they have a life, they go off and have children, and then somebody wants a divorce, and the non-moneyed spouse is like, what do you get? Mm-hmm. Particularly if the house they're living in is owned by a trust and their whole lifestyle has been supported by a trust. Mm-hmm. What's she entitled to?
Right.
That's a hard case.
Mm-hmm. Well, because everybody, we talk to all of our friends, and we talk to our friends, and our friends say, well, you need to continue the life that you've been accustomed to.
Yeah.
So you should be able to still live in $1 million house. Like, why is it fair? And I do joke about the word fair, because I think it's every judge, every attorney, everybody thinks that that's the F word in the court system, because it's not what's fair, right? It's not just because, well, you've led this great lifestyle, so it's fair for us to take a couple million and give it to you so you can continue. That's not how this works. You may be talking to people that have had completely different situations. Now, they sound like the same situation to you, but they are completely different. And the devil's in the details. These nuances that Beth has talked about are significant. Even the funny part that you just said, like a December statement is not the same as a year-end statement. For normal people, they're like, what's the difference?
Right.
But those are the types of things that if you have a situation where you had separate assets, if you had anything coming into the marriage, it's probably going to be a little bit more intense analyses than just saying what's mine is mine and we'll split the rest. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, and tracing can get very expensive because it is so detailed. my joke is that I will have clients come into my office and say, I had $20 when I got married and I want that $20 back, and I'm going to pay you $10,000 to find it. So I usually try to talk them out of that always, but we're usually talking about significant amounts of money. But it takes a lot of time to do tracing. It's very time intensive. And I think those are hard conversations we have to have with clients a lot.
Yeah. And we haven't really even talked about the fact that most of the time, these are not clear cut. There are deposits and withdrawals coming in and out of accounts. There are different things that are happening that even the clients don't remember. I mean, we had one case that we were doing, and there were a couple huge influxes, like 600,000, 800,000. And I was like, what the heck happened? And they're like, oh yeah, we sold a house, or we did this, or we did that, and they can't always remember. So, I mean, that's the other thing is there can't be a reliance just upon verbal testimony, right? Like, we have to see the documents. We have to know what actually happened. And the other thing that people don't necessarily realize, because they want to say, well, I had this amount prior to, we've gone through a 2000, in the year 2000, we had a big bust. In the 2008, we had the housing crisis. And I always thought when other people would talk about all these economic issues, like, how do you remember those dates? Oh, now I know. Now I know why I remember those dates. We had a pandemic, so you can't just make those assumptions, because the court is going to want something more specific. And that's the issue.
Absolutely.
I agree.
I mean, because if you want them to just come up with a number, I don't know if you're going to like that number.
If you can't prove it, they're going to make the presumption that it's marital.
Correct. Mm-hmm. And that's why this is such a big deal. It also, to what Beth has said, you really have to talk to a professional and get an idea of what the cost is going to be entailed in this. Because sometimes I'll be like, hey, let's go after your biggest account first and try to prove that out, and then look at some of these ancillary accounts. Because sometimes, even recently we did one, and, the judge was just like, well, I just don't know how she's going to live. And I'm like, but the analysis is correct. Like, I mean, this is what it is. Mm-hmm. And they still have that discretion. So, I mean, a lot of times I think, Beth, maybe we're doing the analyses to try to settle the case. And sometimes that's a good idea, right?
Oh, most of the time, yes. And this goes back to what I said earlier, that we don't have a lot of case law. Well, that's because we don't go to court. Most of our cases settle. It's this never-ending circle that we don't have a lot of case law. So therefore, you don't want to go to court because we don't know what's going to happen. So therefore, we continue to not have case law. But yes, settling is. I spend most of my time in mediation, but I have to do this analysis for mediation as well. So this isn't just for court. This is so that we can get there and we're able to settle, because we all have all the facts. We've done all our work, and we know what the balance sheet looks like, the separate and the marital property.
And I will even say one last thing, and then I think we've given so much information, but the final thing really has to do with the fact that the way we do this work has changed over time, with very little case law to dictate how it changes. And so if you think you're just going to find somebody that's going to be able to research how to do this, that's not going to be the case. Like, I have been doing this for about 20 years. I think, Beth, you have a very similar trajectory. Mm-hmm. This year is the first time that I testified to the hybrid pro rata method in court. But have we been doing it for years and years and years? Have I been part of who's, a group that's perfected it in our area of how we as experts deal with it, right? Like, we are consistent.
Right.
First time in 20 years that I've been able to put forth a case that actually, goes towards this. And that's a lot of states, right? Mm-hmm. So there's not this like framework of how to do it. You have to merge the law and the finance together and get a good team that understands it, because this is a complex situation and you could spend a lot of money and not have a good position at court, which is not the place that you want to be, right?
That's right.
Well, if I think we've covered almost everything, unless you guys have something else to add, we appreciate all of the information. And if people would like to reach out to you, I know that for the most part, a lot of professionals will meet with people or take questions and things like that. So I think if you're in Georgia, you should reach out to Beth from a financial. Like I said, she's got the credentials for business valuation, for finance, and she's also an attorney. Bob Boyd, if you have complex financial matters, I think you really need to reach out to Bob and his staff to kind of get a framework. So don't just assume that you know how to deal with some of these financial issues. They're different in each state, right?
Very much so, yes.
Well, thank you so much, both of you. I'm sure we'll find another topic to talk about some other time, but this was a great one. Appreciate
Thanks
it.
for having us.
Thanks, Melissa.
Good.
Awesome.